Welcome home. This is the Irish Roots Cafe where every day's a holiday and there is always room for one more. Just pull yourself up a seat in the corner booth. We're going to interview some exciting people with our new vlog, so they say. And today we have Louisa Blevins, and she's going to explain several things about her life and how interesting it is, and how some of you out there in vlog land might be in the same case. You know, some people like it. We'll be talking to you too, I think, in the future. Louisa, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike.
Well, you know, since this is has got an Irish theme, what was your first experience in Ireland, and when?
The first time I went to Ireland was it was 20 years ago this month, back in 1997. My family and I took a big trip to around the British Isles, and so we ended up in Ireland, and we stayed in Calais, in a small town outside of Templemore in County Tipperary, and I remember the way I remember it is possibly romanticized, but lovely anyway. We rented a cottage, and it was down the road from a pub. It was O'Sullivan's Pub, which I think is still there. And I remember I learned to play pool there. I was probably too young to be playing pool in a pub at the time. I was about 6 years old, and yeah, that's the first experience I have, and it was really lovely and very relaxed and lovely people.
And how long did you stay?
We were there for, I believe it was just over 2 weeks.
Oh, 2 weeks is good. That's a good amount of time.
Yeah, it was really lovely. We were based there, but we would go off and see other things. So, like, I saw the Cliffs of Moher, and my parents loved taking pictures of various, there's all sorts of ruins, of castles and everything all off the roads in Ireland, and staying and taking pictures of those and that type of thing. And yeah, it was really lovely. It was much more about just sort of relaxing, though, and experiencing the people rather than going, like, I never went to the Blarney Stone or the Book of Kells. That stuff I'd never done.
Yes.
So.
Did you make a return trip back after that?
I have not been back. I've made many an attempt to get back, and it's sort of never worked out, and yeah.
Well, tell us the big news. What's happening this fall? How did you get invited back?
I got accepted to the Masters in Irish Music Studies program at the University of Limerick. So I'm making the move to Ireland in August, and of course I couldn't be more excited. I decided to pursue Irish music as a career. God, it would be about 7 years ago now. And they had a degree that at the time was a bachelor's in Irish music. And I actually applied and auditioned for that and got rejected, which was very sad. But they told me, when I asked why I was rejected, they told me that I had a good foundation, just basically go away, sort of develop your skills some more, and then come back. So when it came time to apply to graduate school, that seemed the natural choice.
Did you send tapes in for them to review again, or did they just say, okay, you're ready?
I didn't send tapes in. I sent, this time I sent like writing samples, examples of music research, as well as just a generic application, and a personal statement saying, why you want to go there, that sort of thing.
So what advice would you give a beginner now that wants to be where you are now? How do they get there?
The advice that I would give, and sounds incredibly cheesy, but just keep going, because, I was very lucky when I got rejected from the bachelor program. I was really heartbroken about it, and I had several people in my life, I was very fortunate, who told me, like, you wouldn't have this much interest and this much ability for it to go to waste.
Yes.
So just keep working, do everything you can wherever it is that you are. Go to trad sessions, meet people who are interested in it, talk to them. These days you've got the internet, so just read about it, learn everything that you can, and just keep, be persistent.
Well, let's real quick bring you back to the U.S. now. You come to the U.S., how do you fit into the Irish community here? What do you do? What have you done? Do you go to pubs? Do you practice music? Have you learned any instruments?
I play in trad sessions around town. I first got involved in playing in trad sessions probably about 5 years ago, I heard about the trad sessions that were at the Gaff, which unfortunately the Gaff no longer exists, but
Right.
they used to have trad sessions there twice a month, and I grew up in that neighborhood. And I was there for a party, and somebody told me about these trad sessions, and so I started going just to listen. And I loved the Bowron, and there was a guy there, Willie Peterson, who a lot of people
Yes.
out there know, who played, and I loved the way that it sounded. And he didn't use a tipper like a lot of other people, but I still really loved it. And so I got his information, and he started teaching me, and that sort of opened up everything. He's the one who introduced me to groups like Planksty and Dedanon and that kind of thing.
And a trad session is where the musicians just come come in almost at random and sit down and play together, and they're usually free,
Yes.
and they're fun, and they have slow sessions for beginners sometimes. Sometimes it's just one big session, but you can learn and pick up things from other musicians, and
Yeah. It's very, the Kansas City trad session community, I think, is very encouraging. So encouraging that it can almost be a little intimidating, which sounds odd, but I remember one of my very first sessions where I actually was playing, I had to happen to be sitting next to Gerald Trimble, who's a wonderful musician and a great guy, and I was sort of shyly playing the Bowron in the corner, and he got right up next to me and was like, "Be confident, play louder."
that's good. That's good.
Which was great. At the time, it was just like, I don't want to.
Well,
But yeah.
tell me what instruments you have played, and is there a difference between American music and Irish music, so to speak?
I think. Well, okay, let me unpack that. The instruments. Bowron's the only instrument I ever play in a trad session, but I started playing piano when I was very, very little. I was around 18 months when I started asking my mother to teach me how to figure stuff out on the piano.
You could talk at 18 months?
Yeah.
I don't know what time normal talking is, but it's...
I started talking at 4 months. I don't know what's
my gosh.
normal.
Einstein did the opposite, I think. He waited a long time.
But and yeah, and then I picked up other things like guitar. Guitar is actually my favorite instrument to play. But in terms of American versus Irish music, I think the big thing that makes the difference with those is actually the harmonies. The melody lines do have some differences. They have what's called dissonances, which is when in American music especially, there'll be an occasional note that doesn't fit into sort of the standard key, what you would necessarily expect. Great examples of that are things like Fireman's Reel has a couple unexpected things. That's a really normal American tune, or Cripple Creek, something like that. Irish music, its harmonies, I think, are sort of more, I don't want to say standard because they're beautiful and they're interesting and intelligent, but our ear, I think, is still sort of more accustomed to them, so we're not as surprised by it. And I think that the fiddling, especially with American music, there's this way of fiddling with American music, and it's a combination of doing what you call double stops, which is where you play more than one string on the fiddle at once. American music, I think, can sound sort of more tight. And a great example of what I'm talking about is Arkansas Traveler. A lot of people have heard that song, and if you haven't heard it, you can find it easily on YouTube. Whereas with Irish music, I think it sounds sort of more open, and that openness in the harmonies, I think, makes it sound more celebratory almost.
I know. I was surprised at singing Shan knows or older songs or even newer songs, comparing Scottish and Irish. And actually, the singing in Scottish and Irish is different on a lot of these folk tunes. And I was surprised because I thought, well, they'll be... But no, there's a difference in a lot of them.
Yeah.
Just a whole different feel to it. What about what instruments have you played or at least started with?
The instruments I consider myself, I'm good. I feel like I'm secure enough to play something without help. Are piano, guitar, violin, and bowron. Those are the instruments that I sort of feel the most secure on. But I've dabbled in several others, ukulele, mandolin.
Yeah.
I'm working on repairing an Appalachian dulcimer right now, so I can start playing that because I think that's a lovely instrument.
Is that a hammer dulcimer or
It's a mountain one. It's long and it's strings. It's not hammered, and you just strum it or you pluck it.
Gotcha,
Yeah.
Gotcha.
The way you hold it and stuff isn't that different from a lap steel, if you know what that is. Yeah, I'm trying to think of other. Oh, clarinet. That was another one.
It's good. You are a musician at heart. Hey, we take up time real quick. That's interesting. How about Grafton and Grand? Can you explain what that is to people?
Grafton and Grand is a website that has a blog that is intended to celebrate Irish culture everywhere, but specifically in Kansas City. I started it 2 years ago with my friend Kiernan Markey, who's a dancer with Kaylee at the Crossroads.
Right.
And it's just this idea of, when I went to her with the idea, it was based on the fact that anytime I wanted to find out what was going on, I had to go to like 10 different websites to find out where a trad session is, or where can I get good fish and chips, or just any of those types of things.
Right.
So when I went to Kiernan and suggested the idea, we started with that idea of just a calendar and a list of businesses, and it sort of grew into a blog. And we actually recorded a podcast that we're going to release pretty soon also.
All right, yeah, that'll be interesting. We need more activities. That's what it is too. And is that podcast based mainly on local operations, but it also expands to national?
It's just sort of us talking about things that deal with the Irish community. Like the first episode that we recorded we talk a lot about Ed Sheeran's new trad-based tracks and what that does for trad music in general, what kind of perception that lends to the music.
Good.
So it's sort of all over the place. Sometimes we'll talk about stuff locally. We hope to interview local people on it, as well as just because Kiernan and I have a lot of discussions about things like music and literature in the Kansas City community. So it's just sort of all over the place.
Can you pigeonhole Kansas City community? What's it like? Can you compare it to anything else?
I don't think so, not really. I mean, I lived in Chicago for a while, and so it's difficult. I have to sort of remind myself sometimes that Kansas City is not Chicago.
Yes.
Because the two communities do function very differently. They're both very large and thriving, but in very different ways. But I don't think you can pigeonhole the Kansas City Irish community. And the Kansas City Irish community continues to surprise me, because sometimes I think like, oh my God, this community is not going to work. Like someone is mad at so and so or whatever, and yet
that's part of Irish life.
Yeah, but sometimes there's sort of it feels like the growth kind of plateaus, and then something happens, like the Irish Center move into Drexel Hall or something, and it just feels like all of a sudden like a whole lot of stuff is happening again, and there's a whole lot of growth, and it's very exciting.
Well, and St. Louis even has got a whole different feel. They have a much larger cultural platform that they've worked on for years, and even the parades are a little bit different, but there's enough similarities that you sure know it when you walk into it.
Yeah.
Are you going to be doing while you're in Ireland, are you going to be doing long-distance blogs or podcasts?
We actually have not decided that yet. So there's a few things there's a couple of decisions about the blog that we have made to deal with when I'm leaving. Like, I'll post about what I'm doing. And my hope is also to talk about stuff like how to be an American grad student in Ireland, because that was something when I was applying to graduate schools in Ireland I had a really hard time finding information about, especially for music. I could find stuff about, someone moving over there for accounting or something. And I have nothing against accountants, but it wasn't stuff. There was only so much that would apply to me. And I know that I'm not the only American music student going over there. So to talk about stuff like that as well as, just talk about what I'm doing. There's plenty of stuff that I want to see, and
that'd be interesting. And you're not in a rush where it's just a hit and miss thing, and you got to leave the next day. So that'd be real interesting.
Yeah, that's the hope, certainly.
Well, let me see. We've run up about 14 and a half minutes. I think we should either get you to sing or dance or play the guitar, just to give us I'm going to try each segment to have somebody do something artistic. So you think you could? I
can play the guitar a bit.
You play as much as you want or as little as you want. Just give us a taste at least.
Yeah.
And that way all these people listening can enjoy some of the musical talents here.
Yeah. I've got a sort of standard jig pattern that I just sort of bust out when I'm watching television and not doing anything too important. That's just for fun.
Well, good. It's all for fun. And heck, you brought that guitar. I asked her, I said, please bring at least one of your 10 instruments.
Yeah, it's yeah, guitar is definitely my favorite. It's not my most fluent, but it's by far my favorite. But some people who pay attention to Grafton and Graham might have actually already heard this already, but it's my favorite, so I'm gonna play it anyway.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Great. You got those fingers moving. I'm thinking they're going to be well trained by the time they get back. You're going to be you'd be able to teach the whole city. You might open up a school, the Blevins School of Irish Music in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Well, is there any parting comments you want to make this podcast will go on, this video podcast, I want to call it, will go out to, of course, Kansas City, but also a pretty good audience in the U.S., Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland.
Yeah.
Some in Australia. Canada might be number 2 sometimes.
Yeah.
What would you like to say to all the folks listening?
Just thank you for listening, really. I always am happy to talk about Irish music, and it's something I love very, very dearly, so I'm always happy to talk about it with anyone who is willing to listen.
Okay, how about contact information for Grafton and Grand?
Grafton and Grand, we have a website. It's just graftonandgrand.com.
Is it the and symbol?
And is spelled out.
Okay,
so it's A&D. And all of our social media has the same handle. We've got Twitter and Instagram and a Facebook page. And we're always looking for ideas for new content. So feel free to email us, graftonandgrand@gmail.com. Yeah, we're always happy to hear from people. So. Yeah.
Great, Louisa. Good luck in Ireland this fall, and I hope I see you sometime before that's all over with.
Yeah, sure.
And remember, this is the Irish Roots Cafe signing off.